Welcome. I'm Linda Brault. I work for West Ed Center for Child and Family Studies. I direct several projects there. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, Cindy Arstein-Kerslake, who coordinates the Map to Inclusion and Belonging, as well as helps coordinate our inclusion facilitation project. So welcome everyone. We're going to talk today about the California Teaching Pyramid and some tools that have been recently released from the National Center that can support children's return to the classroom. So first, I just want to make sure for the few of you out there who may not be familiar with the teaching pyramid, the teaching pyramid is one of the multi-tiered systems of supports that you must have heard all sorts of things about. And what that means is that we have some promotion things that we do for all children. We have some prevention tools that we use for children who are at risk of developing severe and persistent challenging behavior. And then we do have some intervention tools for use with children with persistent challenges. And the teaching pyramid is the same as positive behavior interventions and supports for the younger set. So this is something that we use with birth through age 8. So when you look at the way that we promote healthy social emotional development, which is how we prevent challenging behavior, is we start with relationships. So we always are focused on nurturing and responsive relationships. That's relationships with the child and the staff member. It's also with the family and the staff person. It's also with the staff person and other staff. So, and it's the children and one another. So we're looking at relationships in all their different ways. We also, equally important and still in that all children promote this, is high quality supportive environments. We know that if the environment can support your teaching, it's like an extra teacher in the classroom. It can provide a lot of visual and physical cues for appropriate behavior, and there's lots of things that can be accomplished when the environment is supporting you. If you have an environment that's fighting with you that you don't have a lot of control over, so maybe you have too many children in a setting, or not any way to break the room up into smaller segments, that can really create problems where none would happen otherwise. Then for children who are struggling with things, we know they're struggling with social and emotional skills. So there are some social and emotional skills that children benefit from being taught. And what we find is that once we identify the gaps in those social and emotional skills and actually directly teach those skills and give children time to practice those skills, we greatly reduce the number of children for whom we have to provide intensive individualized intervention. So the number of children that are served in a tiered approach always get fewer as you go up the tiers. And when you look at the size, it's smaller numbers, but more intense service. So at the base, we're talking about all children, including children who have challenging behaviors. They still need the relationships and environment. Then we have a few children that we are picking out to really teach social and emotional supports. And we recommend that you teach the whole class so that the other students can act as peer supports. And then finally, we go to the intensive individualized interventions. And I like to point out that the intensity at this level is not for the child. Children who have challenging behavior already live an intense life. Everybody's always getting on their case. So if we can spend some time ourselves being very observant, really trying to figure out how can we make this child more successful, that child's experience is going to be, oh, this is what it's like. And the intensity, again, is on our part as the adult to make sure we have everything set up. So it will come as no surprise to most of you that we have been talking about quality for a long time in the early childhood world, and high quality early education practices, developmentally appropriate practices, are all those things that are in the base of the pyramid. That's the foundation, relationships and environments. For those social and emotional supports, there are some targeted social skills curricula that are out there and commercially available. Many of you are probably familiar with Second Step. There's also Triple P and some other things. And basically most of the social skills curricula were based on the same research that the pyramid is based on. So if you don't have a social skills curricula, you can access the curricula that is taught in the teaching pyramid. And if you have one, it'll complement really nicely. But we find that that real attention to those skills in both social and emotional areas really make a difference for children. When we do end up having those very few children who continue to struggle with persistent challenging behavior, we use the process that many of you are familiar with called positive behavior support. And what we love about positive behavior support is that when we get to this point, we're not introducing new interventions. We're just individualizing a lot of the interventions we've been using all the way up the pyramid. But what we like to tell everybody is there's really one more tier that is the most important tier, and that is the effective workforce. Because without the staff and teachers and administrators knowing about these practices and implementing these evidence-based practices, we wouldn't get much good information. So one of the things we like to do as we train in the teaching pyramid is to remind people, you may want to talk about, the child that's making you crazy, but we always have to walk up the pyramid and start at the bottom. So when we walk up the pyramid, we always start by saying, how have I built nurturing and responsive relationships with all of the children, with all of the families, and with my coworkers? And a lot of times people will say, well, yeah, I have good relationships with children. And I always like to challenge them. Do you have good relationships with every child? Are there some children who you just are like, I don't want to spend time with them? Or parents that you think, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm busy? Because that's the thing. The kids who need it the most, the parents who need it the most, they actually push us away with their behavior. So we have to work really hard to connect with them and to realize that they're looking for a different way of connecting through relationship. The next thing we ask is the environment high quality and supportive to all children? I think this is an excellent time to think about when you have a child that really is struggling and you look around and say, well, the one thing that he's struggling with, everybody else is doing well. How can I fix that? So an example is transitions. Part of good environments are transitions. And what we know is children appreciate signals when there's going to be a transition. But let's say this child is going to throw a fit every time the signal starts because he knows now I have to stop playing. So you have to think of a different way to give him a signal, to get him involved so that it can be supportive now that you've understood his needs. And then you've got to teach the social emotional skills. One of the ahas that we've had since doing the teaching pyramid training, which we've been doing now since about 2005, is that a lot of people talk about social and emotional skills, but fewer people teach them to the children and give children opportunities for directed practice in social emotional skills in ways that are natural and fun. And then, of course, when we've looked at this for the whole class, we then can think about this according to each child and think about individualizing each of these. So we took this same concept and we're going to give you some tools that might be helpful. And these tools are all available on our Teaching Pyramid website. And I will give you that information at the end. I also want to point out that I did upload a PDF of the PowerPoint to this session. So hopefully you're able to get a copy of it. But when we think about how we support and how we walk up the pyramid, what's missing in this earlier picture is the effective workforce. So we want to just remind people it always starts with us as the adult. Teachers need to have a lot of time for self-reflection and get support for themselves from other people and within themselves. So we have to always think about it starts with us. So one of my colleagues in San Francisco, Elia Dominguez, introduced me to this self-care on the spot, SOS, and I love it. And this is activities that anybody can use to support yourself whenever you're having a feeling of overwhelm. And I think that that's a great thing for us to be aware of, because we sometimes can't help but have a moment that we're feeling dysregulated. And we have to keep thinking about what can I do so that I can re-regulate myself and be available to be a calm and supportive person for other children. And this inside this cup says you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. So what Elia likes to tell me is she wants us to be pouring from the saucer. She wants us to take so good care of ourselves that the cup is overflowing and we get to pour from the saucer. So I'm going to share with you just a few ideas of activities that anyone can use whenever they're feeling overwhelmed, and you can take them with you. They don't cost anything. They don't require any special equipment. And the first one is breathing. Luckily, that is one of the most effective ways we have to lower stress in our bodies. And it's there's a lot of other health benefits, and I know some of you probably have spent more time on looking at different kinds of breathing and breathing patterns. One of the reasons I have this photo here is we do know from the way our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems work together that breathing in through your nose and out through pursed lips, like you're blowing a bubble, actually activates that parasympathetic nervous system, which helps to decrease our stress. So we're going to just take a couple of breaths right now. And one of the ways that I have learned, it's very hard for me to lead breathing and talk. I don't know why, I'm bad at it, but I'm going to try. We're going to breathe in and count to 5. Then we're going to hold and count to 5. Then we're going to breathe out and count to 5. Are you ready? So try it with me. If you want to put your feet flat on the floor, if you're sitting, that helps. Or if you're standing, that's fine. So here goes. In through your nose. And then hold for 5. And then let it out for 5. So we'll do that again. See, I don't know how to talk and do it at the same time. So I'm going to count with my fingers. We'll breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. So right away, what that does is it gives your body and your blood more oxygen. The oxygen can help displace some of the cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline, those kind of fight, flight, and freeze things that are happening, and it can really help lower our stress. So there you go, breathing. When in doubt, breathe. Self-care is really critical. So these new handouts were created from the National Center on Pyramid Model Innovations, which we are partnered with, and we have Californiized them and put them on our website. And this is the link. If you just go to cainclusion.org and then click on the pyramid, and then there's a link to walking up the pyramid, you'll find a lot of these. So self-care, this is a taking care of yourself. This is a handout that can be used for teachers. It could also be shared with parents. And it really talks about how important it is for us to be in a calm spot and a calm space so that we can be available for children. And I love the whole, when you fly, they always have put your own oxygen mask on first. And the reason for that is you need to be breathing clearly so you can think clearly and help whoever you're with that needs help. If you try to help them and you pass out, you're no good to anybody. So we want to really always prioritize self-care. So here's a great technique that I like to teach kids, and it does a combination of things. It's got the breathing in it, but it also has some bilateral stimulation for the brain, and it involves a tapping technique, which is shown to reduce stress in some people. So what you do is you make a butterfly with your fingers. So you loop your thumbs together, and then you fly the butterfly into your chest so that your fingers are sort of on your collarbone. And then you alternate tapping your collarbone with this your hands as the butterfly wings. And you can also think a soothing statement. I am here. I am safe, as you're breathing in and out. I can only control what I can control. If it's difficult for you to hold this position, you can simply cross your arms, and you can do it either way. And then the same thing, just alternate those tapping motions. And this is a very soothing sort of hug. It's a butterfly hug. And then we always end it with a big squeeze where you grab your arms, really give a good squeeze. And that's one of the things that we know children are missing, some of that good squeezing, that if we can teach them how to give some of it to themselves, that can be a helpful thing. So I hope you practice the butterfly hug. Moving up the pyramid, we looked a little bit at the effective workforce. I am going to mention now it's all about relationships. So we want to really focus on those nurturing and responsive relationships that we talk about. And the reason that we have to focus on relationships is that's how children learn. Children learn through the interactions with us, with the adults, with each other. And we know that if we can build those relationships early, that's going to help us if there is something that we need to deal with later. So if you've got a family member that you have difficulty dealing with, and the first conversation you have with them is, I'm worried about your child, it's not going to go very well. But if you've had small conversations all along the way, it's going to have a better grounding in that. I will also remind you, and some of you are already back with children, others of you are getting ready to do that. I know people are in all different places, but just remember that over the past 6 months, some children will have had very little interaction outside of their own family. So they may have been used to seeing 2 or 3 or 4 other people, and that's it. Other children will have had multiple adults or teenagers directing and correcting them. So they've had lots of bosses. And I think that it's important to recognize we don't always know which situation they've come from. And either case, it's going to be hard for them to adjust to the structure of a school setting. And we also know that children who have the most challenging relationships are really hungry. The most challenging behaviors are really hungry for strong relationships. But I think of them as like a porcupine. They sort of push you away with their quills just when they need you most. So we have to really recognize when we're saying, oh, this child is pushing me away, I've got to find a way to get in and give that child some connection. So one of the tools that is available are some new ways to give greetings to one another. We know that lots of kids love to give high fives, they love to hug when they walk in the room. So here's some non-contact ways: smiling, putting your hands on your heart, giving an air hug, superhero salute, I love that one, thumbs up, blowing a kiss, elbow bump if you're comfortable with a little bit of contact, and waving hello. So this tool is available that you can download, and you can also create your own and have the kids come up with ways that they want to do that. We also find this helpful sometimes on how do you say goodbye to mom and dad, because that's going to be a quicker transition for most children. And so you might want to give them some options. Like you can wave, they can give a hug for them. And we know that family connections are important. And one of the things that I've heard from people who have been in the reopening process is that casual conversation you can have when children are being dropped off and picked up really has changed, because we have to minimize the amount of time that other adults are interacting. So we're trying to stagger some of the drop off and pick up. We're trying to get parents to do it very quickly and not come into the classroom. So it can be hard to stay connected with families. On the flip side, I've had several people tell me that since doing more support with the families, either by phone or by Zoom or other means, they've found themselves getting deeper relationships with the families and more opportunities. So what we want you to think about is, how are you going to keep those communications going? How are you going to even reach out to people in person, on paper, email, text, phone, etc. So this handout, which is downloadable, gives lots of different ways to communicate, both in orientation, letting them know what's happening, etc. There's even a handout that gives some possible scripts that you could have for calling a family and talking to them. And I think it's important to remember, just like with kids, adults will need to have things repeated to them. They will not hear it all the first time. They may forget things. Visuals are going to be very helpful for adults. So making sure that there's both words and some visuals of what's supposed to happen, like use this pen, put dirty pens here, one person sign in at a time. You've seen now the stay back this far. So there's all sorts of ways that we can use our visuals that we learned help. There's even this great new My Teacher Wants to Know welcome back interview. And so many of you are familiar with My Teacher Wants to Know, which is a tool we share during our teaching pyramid training. And it's a way of getting a broader idea of what children like, how they respond to different people, what parts of the day go well for them, etc. It's a great tool. This is an adaptation of this tool specifically to find out how has shelter at home been going for this child and family. So this is, I have a small copy in Spanish, but I'm just going to show you some of the ones that are in English. And again, my teachers want to know it's downloadable on that Walking Up the Pyramid website. So the first question is, have there been changes to your child's environment at home that might impact their transition back that you want us to know about? So there's lots of options and an other. Also, it asks during the stay at home time away from school, and then it asks, how did your child respond? You know, did they miss seeing friends? Did they enjoy being home? Were they clingy? Were they anxious? You know, whatever it is. So you can get a little sense from the parents or family members. There's another one. We want to effectively support your child at school. What strategies have worked best for you? And this is true. It's been several months for many children that they've now gotten to a whole nother developmental stage. So really looking at some of those things. How can we help you support your child at home? Do you need resources to support your child? And then this gives you an idea of how you might help bridge that gap between what you're doing in school and what they're doing at home. And then it talks about how's the best way to keep in touch with you, and are there any other things you want to share with us? So it's just a simple form. You can use it as an interview on the phone or over Zoom. You can send it to families and they can send it back. You know, there's lots of ways. And we do have it only in Spanish and English, but if any of you want to translate it into another language, just contact me and I'll send you a version you can adapt, or you can send me the language and I'll put it in. So after we have taken care of our relationships, we want to also be looking at that supportive environment. And let me just remind you that if within a supportive environment, there's lots of different elements. And one of the things that we have found very effective with young children are visual strategies. So this is, we use pictures, symbols of a word or an idea to support whatever verbal message we're giving. This helps children who are still learning language. It helps children who have delays in their cognitive abilities or their language. It helps children who are learning English, who speak a different language at home, because once we say something, it's gone. But a visual picture or an object is something that they can still look back at and get an idea. So you can use this with individual children. You can also use it with your whole class. And as I mentioned, you can use it with your families because parents appreciate visuals as well. So here's some of the things you can do with a visual. So over here, we have an example of a mini routine about a transition. To clean up, they go to the cubby, get their jacket, look for their partner, get in line with their partner, hold hands, and then they go outside. So you can communicate clear expectations with visuals. You can support receptive language as well as expressive communication. It helps children build their memory. We know that children need, as they get older, to be able to remember a string of things, and that string of things is often related to their age, although I cannot remember 60-some things. So, but very young children might only remember one or two things. As they get a little older, they may remember two or three. So it enhances memory. They've actually done studies that if you write things down and they can look at the pictures, and even if you move that picture, if that's been up for a while, the children sometimes will look in that area and in their mind's eye, they will still see those pictures. So it's just really a powerful tool for some children. You can also show them what you're looking for. You know, a lot of times we say things to children without them understanding. So we might say, we want you to use your walking feet. What does that mean? So if we have a picture of somebody walking, that helps. You can also teach routines, as I said right here with this transition. You can break down a routine and give it little steps with pictures. You can also use the visuals to cue or teach positive behavior or new skills. So it's a very handy tool that I don't want people to forget about. So just, think for a minute about your current environment. What visual strategies are you using? How can you use more visuals to support the children? As this picture shows, how can you get your ducks in a row? Get it? So if anybody wants to share in the chat box, Cindy hopefully can see the chat box and she'll let me know if anybody's got something to share about visuals. All right. So another element of the environment that we talk about is transitions. And I mentioned this before because transitions, I think, are something that we all need to be more proactive about. We may need more planning. So here's some ideas. We think that for many children, their schedules may not have been consistent. They may need more transition cues and signals because they haven't had to be tuned into that for a while. I'm going to share with you some transition cue cards that are available for downloading, but you can also make your own. I think we mentioned the drop-off and pickup routines can be more complicated, so you might need to think about those transitions and planning those. I know I had one program that did a videotape of what a drop-off would look like and what pickup would look like, and they had a child, one of their own preschool teachers' children acted out for them. And then every family was able to look at that and to see it with their child, and it was super helpful. So don't underestimate the planning and teaching that you can use for this. The other thing is, as we're looking at some of the cleaning and sanitation requirements, there may need to be, instead of transitioning from point A to point B, there might need to be something in between that you do. So one of the things to think about is, are there activities that you can keep children engaged? It's time for a dance party, or do you want to, can people learn some songs with hand gestures? Are there some things you can do while you're waiting that won't feel like just sitting around and waiting, that really have an activity part of it? I've always said for transitions, it's good to think of transitions as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. In this case, you may have to beef up the middle and think about that. So planning with your co-workers is going to be super important. Or if you're alone with a family childcare home or a small group of children, you have to plan for them. How can they self-entertain while you're perhaps doing some of the cleaning? So here's some of the transition visuals that are available. And again, these are downloadable on our website. And these, I gave you a Spanish sample of some transition visuals. Cards, stand in a line, sit with your crossed legs, I think. And you can take these and get ideas and do your own with pictures of the children in your class, or you can certainly use these. These are all available. I also would say that there's transition signals can be used to prevent a lot of issues for children who are wrapped up in their play. And of course, any of us that have been deeply engaged in a conversation and our Zoom is suddenly ended and we have to go back out of our breakout room, we know that even with a transition signal, sometimes it's hard for us. So what we want to do is think of all the different kinds of transition signals we have available and see which ones of those is going to work for different children, and be sure that you have more than one in your tool belt. So I just want to, say again, transition signals. Some people call it warnings. We like to think about it as signals because a warning seems a little bit like, ah, and we don't want to startle anyone, like I probably just startled you. Another really important part of the environment is what we are looking for in the environment. So a lot of times when you're supervising a group of children, you're looking for trouble. What we want to encourage you to do is to look for success, scan for success. And one of the best ways to do that is to be really clear about what is it we're looking for, so that what we can find is, if we don't have an idea of what's happening, but we see something we don't like, we're quick. But if we know what we're looking for, we can comment on that. So we can make a list of behaviors we want to see and really think that through, particularly as we're looking at new safety procedures, and we'll talk more about that. But then post those in different places around the room as visual cues for us, the adults. We can post pictures around the rooms so that the children can see those and they can add to those frequently as well. And so just thinking about some ways that we can shift for that scanning for success. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things we want to teach. And we know that in the teaching pyramid, we talk about when a child doesn't know how to drive, we teach. When a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. And when a child doesn't know how to behave, we also want to teach, not punish. So this is where we start identifying we need to teach. So these are the areas that we have learned to teach. If a child doesn't know how to make friends, everybody, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to express emotions, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to manage emotions, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to solve conflicts, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to behave, we teach. And so our biggest lesson, and the reason we love the concept of the teaching pyramid, is that for many years, we've just said, he should know better. You know, I told him a million times what to do. But once we recognize he just doesn't know how, he hasn't practiced it enough. It's not something he can do when he's under stress, whatever it is. It's really helpful to know that. So we love this concept. And these are the 4 areas that all the research shows kids need teaching in: friendship skills, emotional literacy or expression of emotions, emotion management, thinking about any strong emotion, whether that's exuberance or anger or frustration. We have to think about all those emotions, and then how to solve conflicts and problem solve. So those are all things we want to do. So one of the really cool things that we teach children in terms of emotions and emotion check-in is emotional literacy. So really understanding that we are using different words for different meanings, and having a check-in center. So on the left, it's a check-in center for parents, that they can get some articles. They can also check in how they're feeling. And we had one parent say, nobody ever asked how I was feeling. And then on the right-hand side, this is something that the children can put their little pictures in. And I'll show you how big it is. Here's a children putting his picture into one of the ways he feels. And this is something you can do as part of your health check in the morning. So it can just be wrapped right into taking temperatures and everything else. And that way you can really have a dialogue with children and families about, well, how's he feeling? How's it going today? And then also you can encourage children to change their feelings if those change throughout the day. So I know a lot of you use these emotion check-ins. And one of the most exciting things that they did recently at the national level is they've come out with real pictures for feeling faces. So they have large cards, they have small cards, they have ways that you can do this cube activity where you put the different emotions on a cube and you spin it forward, and then the kids get to act out the emotion that's showing on the top. And you can see it's a nice activity with small groups. They can sit around. So feel free to download those pictures. You'll get lots of them. And you can use those, and they are both English and Spanish on the same pictures. Here's another series of things for calming when we want to manage those strong emotions. One of the things on the right is about us. It's about the adults staying calm. And this is something that you can share with families as well. It talks about staying calm yourself, reflecting on what's going on, and then reconnecting with your child, really making that deep relationship connection. And we can do that in the classrooms as well. Then they have this wonderful calming resource for children. What can they do? They can take deep breaths, take a drink, count, take a break, listen to music. So you can, again, you can cut these up and use them as visual cues and visual choices for children, or you can create your own, as many of you have, a calming corner or the calm center, or maybe you even have the calming bucket from the Inclusion Collaborative. And we never want to throw children to solutions first. We always want to, but we love the fact that the teaching pyramid assumes that children don't always know what to do. So when we say, oh, you have a problem, or oh, there's a conflict here, what are you going to do? They don't always know. So they have always provided some solution cards. They now have what they call a home edition, but essentially a lot of them are the same ones you use in class. And these again have real photos. So feel free to look at those for inspiration. I want to point out that on our website, we also have the problem solving steps and the conflict resolution steps. And that always starts with stopping and thinking, what's happened? What's the problem? And how do I feel? We never want to skip that step. We want children to identify how they feel before thinking of the solutions. Then this has an extra square in it with the little girl and the 3 pictures of herself that asks, and this is really good for older 4s, 5s, and early school age, what would happen if, would it be safe? Would it be fair? How would everyone feel? So once you come up with a solution, it gives you a way to sort of weigh those solutions and make a decision on which one would be the most fair. And then you give it a try. So there's another strategy. And then last, but certainly not least, there's a way to individualize that support. And as I said earlier, the strategies that we use for children with intensive behavior problems are essentially the same strategies, but maybe individualized. So we want to always be walking up that pyramid, like we said before. And when we get to the top, we go back through it again for now this one child. Have I built relationships, nurturing responsive relationships with this child, with Maria, and with Maria's family? And how many of the coworkers have good relationships with Maria? And then how is the environment working for Maria? Are there areas and times that she struggles? What are some gaps that she might have in her social skills or her emotional skills? Can I teach her better how to manage her strong emotions, or more words for different emotions? So that's how you can use this. And we've even got a form that you can use to document what you're trying along that way, so that if you've got an individual child, you can really think about what are 3 things either I've done or I can do to strengthen my relationship with the child. What are 3 things I've done or can do to examine the environment? And what specific social emotional skills should be targeted? And can we find 3 times in the day to practice when the child is calm? So this is our tiered plan of action. And this is a form that you can look at and really do that. You can say, I can do this, or you can use it as documenting what you have done. And it's something that can easily be shared with families to kind of document a good faith effort on the things you've been trying with a child. And we also have a relatively new handout that helps, again, outline some steps that we can take when a child is having an aggressive or physical response. So this is just something that talks about how we as the adult take our deep, slow breaths, because we've got to get calm first. We are projecting our emotions to children. So when we move toward them, we should be moving calmly and quietly and really thinking about that. And then having the children breathe with us, reflecting the situation evenly, non-judgmentally, and then reflecting afterwards. So let me just say one more thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. I meant to say when I was talking about making the list of scanning for success, that one of the things that people have found helpful is to really think through some of the safety things that we're now looking for, so that instead of being harsh or upset when children aren't doing something, like saying, what do you mean? Why are you doing that? Stay further away. We can instead recognize when children, oh, you guys are keeping a good distance apart. You're really being safe. Or you put your toys back into your basket. That's where we keep the toys. You're being so thoughtful. So we can start really paying attention. What are those behaviors we want to see? And then again, write them down so that we can remember to be commenting on them. What we find is when children hear those comments to themselves and their peers, they're going to be much more likely to understand what those mean. Okay, Cindy, are you ready to share your story?
I'm ready. Okay. Okay, so the picture that you see is a picture of my daughter, Sarah. And we were cleaning out the garage and we found a big box of her Beanie Babies. And Sarah loves children, and her dream is to work in a childcare. And she's currently with a supportive employment program. And we kind of developed this idea about how to share her Beanie Babies. I am the coordinator of Map to Inclusion and Belonging, and I curate resources, and I had found many books on helping kids to wear masks. And one of the books from the National Center, the same set of resources that Linda is talking about, so that's wearing masks. Anyway, we decided to make those books and laminate them, and to make masks for Beanie Babies. We thought that if preschoolers saw Beanie Babies wearing masks, they might be more likely to wear masks. And then I had a friend who lives across the street who was making masks for adults, and I asked her to make masks for children. So we put together, and Sarah was a great helper in this, in finding some back to school supplies that we thought would be fun, as well as the Beanie Baby with a mask and a child's mask and some back to school supplies. And that would, we were hoping that would encourage kids to wear masks. And it was a great success in many ways. First of all, this was a project that Sarah's had more fun with than anything that she's done in supportive employment. She was so excited to get up every morning and to work on these buckets, because it has to do with what she's interested in children. And she has taken this COVID thing very seriously. She wears her masks, and she thinks everybody else should wear masks as well. And this was an opportunity for her to help. This is a really valuable project, and I didn't know how valuable it was until I got feedback from the Crisis Nursery Center here in Sacramento, where we live, and they loved it. The staff loved everything that was in the buckets, and when they were given to the families, the parents, it was like a godsend. They were having a really hard time trying to explain to kids why to wear masks, and the book did that. And the Beanie Baby was just an invitation to wear a mask. If the Beanie Baby's wearing a mask, I can wear a mask too. And this was so successful that we made another set, and we gave them to the Mustard Seed, which is a school for the homeless. And so that staff was also really excited about those. It has inspired us to, we're all out of Beanie Babies, but if you have Beanie Babies you want to donate, let me know. We'd love to do some more Beanie Baby buckets. But instead we're going to do a calming kit, and we have picked out some items to put in our calming kit, and we are based on the National Center's calming kit. We are going to put together our own little book with I Can Be Calm By, and we'll put together another book with pictures of different ways that kids can calm themselves. And then we'll put the instructions for families in with our little, actually it's kind of a treat bag, and we'll have lots of fun things to do to help kids calm themselves. So this has become a really valuable activity that my daughter is very proud of, and it's a valuable service. And we're using the resources that have been developed by the National Center, and they've been really effective. So that's my part.
Things are, but this gives instructions in the PowerPoint. There's also the email address, teachingpyramid@wested.org will get notices to us. I didn't put our emails in here, but if you say, can this get to Cindy or can this get to Linda, it will. So let me escape for a minute and we'll go to the homepage. So can you all see this? I guess Cindy will tell me if you can see it. So this is our homepage. If you go to cainclusion.org, and then the teaching pyramid obviously is over here. So if you click on the teaching pyramid, that'll take you to the teaching pyramid homepage. And on the homepage, there's a little thing about walking up the pyramid down here, but there's also on the toolbar up here with all the different parts, you can get to walking up the pyramid. And then it does just what we were talking about. It takes you starting at the effective workforce and all the way up. So in the effective workforce, it always starts with you. There's some information just about things that people can do for themselves. Then there are these help us stay calm. So this is something, again, that you can download right here. I showed it to you earlier, and there it is. It's in English and in Spanish. There's taking care of yourself and taking care of ourselves. So there's the taking care of yourself is a little different book. This is one I showed before about taking care of yourself. And then the other one is more about, it's kind of a little workbook that you can look through as a provider, and it helps you look at your own stress, what you can do to take care of yourself. So it's really lovely, and it comes from the Center for Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. So again, I just want to, play around, click on these things. You might be amazed. There's also, if you're a leader, there are some things for promoting teacher retention, and also a leadership team's guide for reopening programs that has access to some additional resources. Then again, you go down for, it's all about relationships. Here's some of that helpful suggestion for communicating with families that I mentioned. Here's the transitioning back to the program, connecting with families. This is one that has a script. I'm going to just open it up for you. It has potential script, sample phone script, and ways that you can adapt. So it really, they just tried to put in all sorts of things that could be useful. My teacher wants to know, that's the thing I showed you earlier. So we have that in English and Spanish. And then there's a variety of different things, tips for supporting yourself during the pandemic. That's for families, taking care of ourselves, helping us have a good day, some positive strategies for families. There's some links to how to talk about the coronavirus to your child, points of connection. So here's the greetings that I showed you earlier, so that you could have those, non-verbal, non-contact greetings downloadable right here. And then there's also the morning health check, which comes from the Center for, let me look right here, Child Care Health Program. So they talk about morning health check. And so you can, use these kinds of things if you need to for when you come in. So we just tried to pull a variety of things. There's also a wonderful video that one of our colleagues in Santa Cruz, who runs the Infant Toddler Center in Santa Cruz, wrote about toddlers and masks, that she shows herself putting a mask on, and it's really directed at toddlers. Then there's also helping children understand emotions. And then there's the wearing masks story that was just shown by Cindy. Here's some things about the environment, which has some of the transition pieces. There's also a wonderful Safe and Healthy by Washing My Hands scripted story. Lots of the transition signals, all sorts of things there. And then here you've got the need to teach. We've got things for friendship skills, emotional literacy, strong emotions, problem solving and conflict resolution, and then looking at things for trauma and individual help. So all sorts of resources there for you if you're interested. And I will also point out one other thing. So if we go back to that working together, if you click on the map to inclusion and belonging, the words there, this is the project that Cindy coordinates, and she's got, she's done 4 fabulous newsletters over the course of the last few months that are really focused on different aspects of coping with the pandemic, some for teaching staff, some for families, some for home work, home activities. So I would really encourage you to go onto this website and look at that. And you might want to join the MAP mailing list, because that's where you can get the newsletters when she sends them out. All right. And I think that's it. Thank you guys for your kind attention. Goodbye. Goodbye.